Call to order the study session for September 5th, and board members are all present. If you'll please stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Well, it's our first meeting of the new school year. And we get to start off with special recognition. I see some students back there and some familiar teachers and principals. Dr. Ritter, you want to take this?
Dr. Harrell, please. Oh, there he is.
Good evening, Dr. Prater and members of the board. It's always an exciting opportunity to get a chance to showcase some of our programs and the folks that make the great things happen in our buildings. We have been fortunate over many, many years to have very competitive speech and debate programs throughout the district, and it's great to have an opportunity to actually recognize them and for some national accomplishments. Mr. Ramsey was unable to be with us this evening from Parkview High School. Dr. Ron Snodgrass is here from Central High School, and glad to see him. And we have our two speech and debate instructors, sponsors here with us this evening from those two schools. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Jack Tuckness from Central High School and Mrs. Nancy Wedgeworth from Parkview High School to talk to you about some of their accomplishments and their team's accomplishments at Nationals this year.
Hello. Thank you for having us. As Dr. Harrell said, I'm Nancy Wedgeworth, and this is my 16th year at Parkview. This past summer, we moved up to second in the nation in rounds of competition at the national tournament, and I had a couple students place 9th in public forum debate. One of those is with us tonight. Erin Sowards is back there, and Tawan Mai is at med school at UMKC, or she would be here tonight. And Dakota Brown is also here. He was in the top 35 in a supplemental kind of debate. But this is the 9th of the past 11 years that Parkview has placed in the top 10 in an event at Nationals. And we've just been very blessed to have the support of a great district and wonderful students at Parkview who represent us well. Thank you.
I'm Jack Tuckness. I know most of you. At Central High School, this is my 13th year, starting my 14th year at Central High School. We had a really good tournament. Central received the Debate Excellence Award. There was only one other school in the state that received that, Monette, and we received that. We were excited about that. That's the third time that our school has received that over the last 7 years. Three of our students that got to attend the tournament are here. Drew Underwood, and next to Drew, why don't you all stand up so they'll know what you are. Drew Underwood and Laura Adkins and Valerie Quirk. Valerie placed 12th in the nation in expository. Is that right? Yeah, in expository speaking. Laura placed 7th in the nation in congressional debate and received an automatic bid back to the national tournament this coming year. And that's the first time that we've had anybody that accomplished that. We had several kids in the top 60. We had one debate team that was 18th in public forum. We had Emma McIntyre also placed 5th in extemp commentary. We had two students, and Parkview had one. Zach was 6th. Zach Perry from Parkview ended up 6th in the nation in the national rankings of the top kids out of about 115 or 20,000 students. We had one student, Garrett Pratt, who placed 25th in that ranking, and Emma McIntyre was ranked 1st in the nation by the National Forensic League. So we had a very good tournament from that standpoint. We had a couple of other kids that are now away at school that placed in the top 8 in parliamentary debates. So we appreciate the support that you all have given us and allowing our students to be able to compete at this kind of a level. Thank you.
Any questions for any of the students? Anybody have any questions for any students, professors, teachers, anybody? Thank you all very much. Very impressive, and I think some of you will probably be back there this summer, if I had to guess. Thanks for coming tonight to share that with us. Dr. Ritter, you want to start us off on this strategic discussion, Mrs. Kissinger?
Several weeks ago, we met with you to talk about the performance process management, and eventually, and our meeting with Carolyn from APQC. Anyway, we said that we would come back once we have a conversation with her, and it was a rather intense conversation, several hours with Cabinet, to be able to align and come up with some initiatives that we're going to focus on. I think it's the November 7th through the 10th. So anyway, I'll let Anita Kissinger here give you guys a little bit of a sense of what that was all about.
And Mr. Tuckness has already departed, but I think it's important that everyone know that when I was a freshman at Kickapoo High School, Mr. Tuckness was my speech teacher. So that makes me really young. It's a pleasure to be back tonight. I want to just do a brief update to let you know where we are with the process performance management. And our purposes really tonight are very simple. We want to communicate to you what projects have been selected for the process improvement, and then just briefly review next steps. Just as a quick reminder, at the August 9th board meeting, we kind of did an overview of process performance management. We shared at that time that there are approximately 230 businesses, 40-some plus educational organizations, and investing with the American Productivity and Quality Center, which is APQC. A number of additional districts have joined just in the last couple of months, so it's exciting to see other educational organizations get involved. We also shared some examples of projects and some of the results that other school districts have gleaned from participation, and then just kind of an overview of what does it mean to look at improving processes, and we did share next steps. Just as a reminder, when we talk about improving processes, we're really talking about improving how we go about doing business that gets the results that we know we need to get for our stakeholders. So we're really going to be focusing on this left side, or pathway 1, which is about measuring and improving how we go about doing our work. It's really, again, about the how, and we are going to be looking at measures, and those, again, are always based on customer stakeholder requirements. In August, we also shared that this begins with virtual coaching, which Dr. Ritter just mentioned, and we did complete that on August 22nd via a virtual coaching session with the person who will be working with us from the American Productivity and Quality Center. And following the project selection, and then we have scheduled this so that we can get their very best person who's their trainer that will work with us for November 7th through the 10th. I think it's important to note that for the work on the projects, they identified that it's important. They've seen most districts minimize the number of projects they start with to 4 to 6, a maximum of 6 and at least 4, and to only have a maximum of 25 total people actually on those project teams, so that we can really do great work or excellent work on the projects that we select for the school district. So our next steps were to select the projects. We've done that, and I'm here to share with you what those projects are. Just as a reminder, when we talk about a project, we're really talking about a set of activities that we're going to go through, these teams are going to go through to solve a problem or an opportunity in our organization. And we will have a specific start and stop time, so kind of a timeline once those project teams get in place about when we're going to begin that work and when we expect to have that completed. You may also recall from our August overview that we said project ideas could result from a number of different places, whether that's a gap analysis or our performance, the outcomes of other projects, feedback from customers and stakeholders, a mapping or shifts in regulation. And I'm going to point to 2 of these particular project idea sources because these are the 2 main ones that we utilize to identify projects. And one is feedback, and I think you're going to see that your feedback as the Board of Education representing our community was key in the identification of projects. I think that'll be apparent. And then one was really looking at some major shifts in standards, particularly MSIP standards. So here are the projects that were selected through that virtual coaching process. One is our budget development process, and you may recall that you as a board identified that as an opportunity. Secondly, our energy management process, and you'll see that that's the one process we identified for the money-back guarantee, that we would glean some cost savings as a district by improving our energy management process. Our third one is improving our program evaluation process, specifically to meet board and stakeholder expectations, and we'll probably be visiting with some of you about what some of your requirements are for what we bring to you as a board in the future, and improving that process. A fourth project is SP5, and particularly part of that is our key action plans. And 2 areas within that we identified we'd focus on is our action plans for meeting student needs, specifically for unique learning processes. An example would be, you as a board mentioned after our WOLF presentation, how can we discover what it is that's happening at the WOLF program that we can translate into other opportunities for students. And then you can see also looking at the gifted education program. We want to make sure we have a thoughtful process in deploying our learning model, so we'll be looking at that. And then our 5th and final project will be looking at our staff evaluation processes. Once again, our money-back guarantee is going to come from our energy management project. Next steps will be in the next few weeks finalizing our project teams and communicating to those folks who will need to attend the training in November. And I want to also invite you, the very first day, November 7th, we can have as many people as we have space in the room. So any of you that are interested in coming that first day and getting the overview of how process performance management works, we certainly invite you to come. And I think Ms. Luton will be communicating with you again about that via email and then asking for your commitment or not to be able to come to that, so we know how many seats we need to hold for you as board members. And we will be trying to include other staff members in the district that may not be on a project team, but it'll be an opportunity for them to learn on that first day. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Wow. You've done a lot.
He's looking at the calendar.
Yeah, I saw my calendar. Questions? Ms. Callan?
Is it 25 people per team or 25 total?
It's 25 total. So we'll have somewhere between 3 and 6, maybe 7 people on each team.
Mr. Hosmer?
I guess the question I'd have is, what is your understanding of, for lack of a better word, the process involved in looking at these processes and kind of working through them to make them better? And what's your kind of understanding of how they're going to go about or we're going to go about doing that?
I think the first step will be, what is our current state of that process? In other words, mapping it out. What do we do first? What do we do second? How do we go about doing the budget development process? And then identifying from that, what is the information that comes into that process? What information are we using and how are we using that? What are the requirements of that process? And is the way we're going about doing that process meeting the requirements of our stakeholders? And I'll use the program evaluation process as an example. It's a great example. We have a process, a step-by-step, really very systematic, methodical process for that. But it's become apparent that that is not meeting some of our stakeholder requirements, i.e. Board of Education. So we need to look at what steps we take, what the information we input into that, and what we're getting out of that, and how it is or is not meeting customer requirements, and then how we're going to change the steps or how we go about doing that. And probably most importantly is in how we're going to measure to know that we're getting the results from the process that are required of that process. So we start by mapping the process that we currently have and then looking for how we need to improve it.
And to kind of follow up on that, where does the value judgment come in terms of what step of the process is not getting the job done, and where does that come in terms of who's kind of giving that kind of subjective look and saying, here's kind of where there's an issue, or here's what's been identified, i.e. by the board? I mean, because we've talked about, for example, program evaluation, but I would venture to guess that the 7 of us have probably 6 different ideas of where it maybe falls short. So
I think that's a good example. And one of the things I mentioned earlier was identifying by visiting perhaps with you as board members prior to the project team starts to say, if you're a key customer, a stakeholder in the program evaluation, what are 2 or 3 common things that you as a board can agree on are critical pieces that need to be in the program evaluation process? And then we go about designing that program evaluation process to meet those 2 or 3 keys. It's not about being all things to all people in all places at all times, but it's about identifying what are the key requirements or common requirements of that process.
I think the thing there that you need to understand is the stakeholder is critical here. And how clear is the stakeholder as far as what their wants and needs are. And then that becomes the input into the process. And then, we have multiple processes we look at, and that input there is going to help us as far as making it very clear. That helps us with what they call the upstream. What is upstream? What are we going to need to look for as far as getting there?
and I understand that. I just think that the stakeholders probably are somewhat varied in,
Oh, yeah.
you know, what they would see as issues, or, you know, what's not working as well, what is working perfectly well, you know, so I guess it's going to be difficult to kind of make those value judgments as you go along. That makes sense.
I think a lot of the major problems we have in education is we try too hard. We do way too many things. And I find that in the classroom, you find that at the sites, you find that in many different ways. There's a lot of energy around wanting to do what's right, okay? And so everything comes to the table. Well, really what this does is it helps us become more proficient, more efficient, more effective in doing that. So for instance, like you said, there's probably, I wouldn't say 6, I'd say there's 7 different views. Okay, I don't know who would agree here, but anyway, I'd say there's 7 different views as far as.
Gene and I are usually lockstep.
Right on.
We basically agree on it.
But anyway, as far as program evaluation, but you
I
see,
agree with you.
what we need then is to have that come together and give us some clear direction, and then eventually you're going to find that we're going to have a very happy stakeholder. Our customers are going to be happy, and that's really what this is all about. That's really what education struggles with the most.
And I think it is one of the greatest challenges we look at as a district. Can we meet every single need of every stakeholder, every want or desire of every individual stakeholder in our district? As much as we'd love to be able to do that, we can't. So we have to identify what are the most critical or most important things that are the highest priority for our stakeholders, and then we make sure that we have processes in place that we can meet those most important or key stakeholder requirements.
When I think, though, we're maybe really not as far apart as we might initially think. For example, with the program evaluation, almost every time, and in their great presentations, we get to the end, and we're like, what do you suggest? What do you recommend? We're always looking for action items. And
Action
we may
plans,
not
yeah.
agree as to what that action may be, but it's give us something that you're going to move this thing forward with, rather than just bringing us to the point of the report and the results. And so, can we agree on that?
I think we'll be very similar.
The thing is that this is so much common sense, and we're hoping that eventually, through time, it takes a lot of work off of everybody's plate because they're so focused. And that's really, hopefully, that's something we're going to see in the classroom as much as anywhere else. And really, I think we need to provide autonomy to those that are doing it right, and help to those that need help as far as focusing is concerned. So we'll see. But we can talk and say too much tonight because we really need to be coached through the process.
Yeah, Mr. Lee had a comment.
As far as talking about 25 people involved, and I agree with having a small number, that's much more efficient. But will that be getting feedback from people, stakeholders, for that group to make? And what I'm saying is there's going to be more than 25 people involved, but there's only going to be 25 people on the actual project teams. Is that the way I understand it?
Yes. One of the things we talked about actually in Cabinet was that one of the purposes of the limited 25 is to identify not only who are the core owners of the process that need to be involved in improving it, but what's important for the future of Springfield Public Schools in building capabilities in district leaders to be able, once we've gone through this learning this fall, that we can take it and apply it in the future to other processes. But we also recognize that if we're going to do this well, that we have to identify what our other stakeholders' not only requirements, but their experiences with these processes. So here's our plan to answer your question, is that while we'll only have 25 people do the intense 4-day training, we know that, for example, whether it's program evaluation or budget development process, we will probably need to have an advisory team connected to the project team, that the project team has the expertise in how to go about improving the process, but we need to hear from the stakeholders that the process is important to as we go along in improving the process. So yes.
I think you need to understand that there's large systems that have the same numbers. In other words, IBM also had 25 people they used with initially. The same thing is true for Montgomery County. They have 5,000 or 6,000 employees, and they had started with 25 as well. So I think that's a critical piece. It's pivotal. It's a pivotal group that's going to eventually involve more stakeholders as it grows.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
I'm just thinking how critical the teams, the makeup of the teams, and so do you have some advice from or some direction from the company who exactly you want to place on the teams, or do you have some ideas of who?
Yes, that was part of the virtual coaching, and I will give you an example. It was pointed out that it would be very important to have someone from IT on the energy management team, because that's often an area that we look at, that we have high level of energy use from our technology. But we also have to have an expert on the team that understands what computers you can and can't shut down, and why not you can or can't shut them down because of updates at certain times. So yes, that was part of the coaching of thinking about certain particularly critical people on some of these process teams.
Just real quick, in terms of the team, again, a lot of these projects that we've picked obviously are going to have impacts in the classroom at the sites, and I'm assuming that we'll rely on people at the sites, teachers, staff members, to be on these teams. Is that part of the...
We have not identified who's going to be on the project teams yet. I think given that it would be 4 days out of the classroom, the odds of us actually taking a teacher out of a classroom or a principal out of a building for 4 days for this initial training probably are minimal. However, I mentioned the advisory teams that we would have, maybe the lead project team, but we would have ongoing work with a stakeholder team, and absolutely we're off base, particularly on 2 or 3 of these, if we don't have an advisory group that includes the people doing the most critical work in the district, and those are the people at our sites.
Thank you very much. We'll stay tuned.
We will update you as we go. I'd like to see all of you on the 7th if we could. Don't take that as a threat. But if you're not there, we'll notice it.
Ms. Luton, we had no comments from the public. Information item, and this is one I'm quite interested to hear about. We have some information from the Any Given Child Initiative and our cooperative thing with Kennedy Center.
Good evening. We're excited to bring the board an update on the Kennedy Center Ensuring the Arts for Any Given Child initiative this evening. You'll recall that we introduced this to the board back in February of 2010, and so I will be sharing some information along with 2 of my colleagues, and I'd like to go ahead and invite them forward. Mr. Randy Russell, who is the Senior Program Officer at the Free Community Foundation of the Ozarks, along with Mrs. Leah Hamilton Jenkins, Executive Director of the Springfield Regional Arts Council, and so they'll share also this evening. So thank you for being here this evening. As we introduced this in February, we gave you an idea of the purpose of the initiative, which was funded through the Kennedy Center, to come into a community and to help that entire community strengthen and expand arts education for their students. It was specifically targeted for kindergarten through 8th grade, but of course as we review things, we actually look a little bit before that because you can't just isolate K-8, and certainly we looked at our high school programming too, but it is important to note that the initiative was specifically targeted at K through 8. We, in March, following the conversation we had with you in February of 2010, we convened an advisory committee composed of local players and in the arts community, and also we had our consultants that joined us from Washington, D.C., the Kennedy Center. And the first part that we undertook, and we told you at that time it would be a community audit. And so one of the things that we did was looked at some instruments, some survey instruments, actually the survey products that the Kennedy Center provided to us to get input from the community at large. And we had the ability to change that, revise it, and make it our own. And so that was a large part of what the consultants worked with us on, is what is it you want to know? Can you take this documentation that's been prepared and then make it your own? And so we did that, and we certainly were benefited by the input of other staff. Dr. Goodman and his staff, as well as Mr. Manus and his staff, were instrumental. And so we kind of isolated the different constituent groups. You can see that we certainly wanted input from parents and our K-8 vocal music teachers, visual arts teachers, and even classroom teachers. This wasn't just about arts in isolation, but the whole idea of integrating the arts throughout the curriculum. So classroom teachers and principals, and then the greater community, those that provide arts programming, whether that's an individual artist or whether that's a community arts organization. Again, my colleagues that'll present a little bit more this evening will share more about those groups that made up those providers of arts programming throughout our community. And then, again, with Mr. Manus and his staff's help, we looked at lots of different constituent groups in terms of the community. We did not feel it was appropriate to do a large-scale survey where we just ask everyone in the whole community, but it was very targeted, and so consequently we felt like we got some really good input from the community, and we're able to kind of capture what their thoughts were. We first of all, just to give you a broad overview of what we learned from the community input, was that first of all, we were very affirmed by our national advisors who travel extensively and visit with lots of districts and communities throughout the nation, that we do have outstanding arts programming, outstanding arts education programming in the Springfield community. And that's something that's no surprise to you as a board that we have that, but I think it was affirming to all of us as those in the district and also the other people at the table that were arts providers outside the district but in the Springfield community about how good we really do have it, about how the partnerships that we've forged over the years, the way people work together, come to the table and discuss not just what's best for them, but what's best for, in this case, kindergarten through 8th grade students, and how we can join forces and create the best kind of environment and programming for those students. So here are some partnerships that I'm sure you're aware of that we enjoy, in addition to the vocal music and visual arts instruction that all of our K-5 students take. And then our 6-8 students have access to as an elective, and we reviewed all of those participation numbers. But these are just a couple of the outside agencies that have partnered with us over the years to provide field trip or actual, hands-on experience of an art form in the community. So again, that was great affirmation that those kinds of partnerships don't exist in other parts of the country. Other communities don't step up and support their students and the district the way that ours does. And so that was very affirming. We did recognize a few things that were maybe something to work on. We don't have systemic programming for creative movement or dance. We don't have systemic elementary programming for drama or theater. So there were some art forms that we have not provided to the same extent that we do vocal music and visual arts and some others. So all in all, it was a really, I think, good situation, a good learning experience for all of us in terms of identifying the very strong programs that we have and also some opportunities that we may want to look at in the future. And so with that broad overview of the input and the constituents that we use to try to gather that input, I will now talk a little bit about the long-range plan. And again, on this, I won't share great details with you, but we did identify an overarching goal to ensure that all children in the Springfield, Missouri community are guaranteed a rich arts education. And so with that goal in mind, we identified 3 strategies to take this on in the next 3 to 5 years. Obviously, with that strong programming that we already have in place, we want to, ensure that continues. So it's a sustainability issue in terms of those funding sources that are allowing us to do that. We want to continue those or strengthen those so that we can continue to have K-8 students accessing those effective, excellent programs. As a strategy, too, though, it would be to take those, as good as they are, and look for ways to enhance them or expand them and increase participation in them. So we've got a lot of great things going on. We want to make sure that we can sustain that as well as expand it or enhance it. And then finally, the strategy is to kind of dream for the future and look at some opportunities that are out there where we could actually initiate additional programming that we don't have available right now. Of course, there are a lot of things to be discussed about the details on that, but again, it was a rich and full discussion with the committee, and it led to some broad actions that are proposed to continue to explore and measure the feasibility of some of those expansions, or that additional programming. So all in all, it's been a very worthwhile engagement. I think a lot of people learned a lot of information, and we're excited about the work that the committee did and will continue to do. It's not over by any means, but we wanted to give you kind of an update on the current progress. So at this time, I'll pass the baton to Leah Hamilton Jenkins, who's with the Springfield Regional Arts Council, and she'll share a little additional information about that work. Leah?
Good evening. It's an honor to be here to talk to you tonight. Kelvin asked that I give a little broader picture of how this plan could fit into the broader vision for our community. And I had the honor to co-chair, along with Emily Fox, who's the executive director of the Discovery Center, the Arts, Culture, and Tourism section of the new community strategic planning process. And I know Mr. Lee sitting on that coordinating committee with me. And we have spent about a year and a half figuring out what the plans or action steps would be. And I thought it would be interesting to tie this into the 5-year arts education plan that we've been spending about a year and a half figuring that as well. So the first goal is to strengthen relationships between local arts and culture organizations and our regional organizations, knowing that we would like to maintain the hub that we are, but also provide our wonderful resources for our regional organizations. And then to develop and sustain arts and cultural education opportunities, not only at the local level, but at the regional level. And that includes building in the long-range plan into this plan that would be approved by City Council, hopefully, and to strengthen the local programs and create an awareness. As Kelvin said, it's pretty amazing what we have here in Springfield and the broader national community, and it's something we should highlight and celebrate. And then just certain specific things like adequate funding for transportation. A lot of our outside arts organizations have wonderful resources to provide to students in the area, but getting them to their facility can be difficult. And that's something that even privately on the arts organizations and are willing to try to figure that out. To increase the economic benefits by developing the travel and tourism industry. Tourism was tagged in with arts and culture on this section, and that's just to make sure that we maintain our competitiveness with other areas, including Branson. Using new technologies to increase civic engagement in the arts. And then demonstrating the economic impact of arts and culture. We did a smaller version of an economic impact study with 36 nonprofit arts organizations that showed $16.4 million in consumer spending just in 1 year in 2010, which is pretty significant when you look at local investment in arts and culture. I think I may have skipped a slide here. Yes, financially sustaining the operating needs of our arts and culture organizations, which I'll get to a piece of that in a moment, because that also includes how we're going to fund the long-range arts education plan. And then increasing the amount of and community awareness in public art and how that adds to civic pride and value of land. So we started about a year and a half ago a very innovative process called the Springfield Arts Collaborative Endowment Campaign. We have about 25% of our arts organizations in this community that have an endowment, and of that 25%, the total is 2% of their operating budgets come from that endowment. So when you look at an ideal operating pie graph or pie chart, It's roughly about 25 to 30% that should come to an arts organization to increase their sustainability. Any less than that, they have the risk of closing their doors. More than that, they risk stagnation, and they also are volatile with the markets going up and down. So knowing that, we started the first privately led Arts Collaborative Endowment Campaign. It's the first, this sounds funny, in the world. But we have yet to find one that's like this. We hired a wonderful fundraising executive out of Atlanta. His name's Scott Giffen. He lives here now to run this campaign for us. And it includes the Symphony, the Springfield Symphony, the Springfield Ballet, the Springfield Regional Opera Lyric Theater, the Arts Council, and the Springfield Little Theater. It also includes the Creamery Arts Center Endowment Fund, the Landers Fund, and last but certainly not least, the Arts and Education Fund, which was initiated 3 years ago, with the Community Foundation's Arts Programming Sustainability Initiative, which Randy is going to talk about. So the Arts and Education Fund is one of the buckets from this collaborative endowment campaign. It's a multi-million-dollar campaign that's going to run 3 years, and it's going to attract national monies. And so we're going to do local first, go national, knowing that on our own we probably aren't significant enough to stand up to the national foundations, but together we will be mighty. So it's a joint solicitation philosophy, one ask, and the direct allocation model means that any funds coming in will go immediately to those endowment funds, and that would include the Arts and Education Endowment Fund. And the goal is for $7 million. That's the goal. We'll see if we can get there. Okay, and it has a donor-centric, it's very donor-centric in its approach. So our hope is that with this Arts and Education Fund, it will help be a resource for some of the wonderful things that we have in this long-range plan. So, and with that, I will hand it over to Randy Russell, the Community Foundation.
Thank you, Leah. It's always nice to be back. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Foundation's role. The Foundation is seen through leadership of the boards, Dr. Prater and other individuals on the board. Our job is to find ways to help fund types of things that benefit our community. One of those that we really want to try to support is what happens in our schools and for our children. It was very affirming, as Kelvin said, to find out that the first awardee in the nation, Sacramento, didn't have near the arts programming that we have here, which is surprising. That's to be commended to the board and to the district itself. That's really an exciting thing to find out. You would suspect Sacramento would have all kinds of programming, but we really surpassed them. One of those that we initiated before the collaborative started was to find a way to support that kind of programming in education. And so the 10 Weeks Festival was developed. It provides monies with Care to Learn on both sides to put direct money into ways that your students can attend events in the community that are offered for no money at all by the agencies that you saw listed previously. So all of those experiences that happen for kids from grade 2 all the way up to grade 5 and then through middle school years are coming from agencies that you saw listed that provide that through their support services like their guilds, and they provide those services for your kids to see. Again, it's very rare that children across the nation would have seen performances by a ballet, a professional ballet, any of the other organizations you see listed there. We want to try to support that. So the 10 Weeks Festival raised funds for that type of activity and to help that continue, make sure those funds stay in place. The overarching goal, though, is to make sure all the agencies that provide those types of services stay sustainable through their endowments. So that's where we started. The Collaborative Endowment Campaign, the Foundation helps put monies toward. If you look at the next 2 slides, I'll have these up very briefly. We are now doing funding within different areas. We've taken a couple years and done specific funding and pulled back our grant programming. Now we're putting our grant programming back up on the table. But at no time in that 2-year period did we pull back on the arts support to help build your schools. These are 2 new grant programs that will be available to try to encourage arts agencies in the community to find innovative ways to help make their programming strong and make their services they deliver to your children strong. So we're excited about these. You can find all of this on our website under the Grant Seekers section. As you look also on the Kennedy Center project, what you see there are the same agencies you saw, plus others, including Angie Knoll, who's here from the Juanita K. Hammonds Hall for the Performing Arts, who serves on the worst acronym in the world, but it is the name of the programming. It's the Arts Programming Sustainability Initiative, which is long, but it means we want to make sure they stay in place. We don't want to lose an arts organization because that way you lose services. So we're trying to do that. The Kennedy Center partnership was a strong piece of that. And we're having an event this next Tuesday, the 13th, at Moxie Cinema. I think it's a very big deal that we have the Vice President of the Kennedy Center Education, Daryl Ayers, who's going to be here visiting. He hasn't visited any of the other sites, so we're proud of that. We'd like you to have this invitation to come to that event, to meet the agencies that provide services for your children. We'd also like to have all of this district staff coming, so Kelvin's sending out an invitation to them. It will be a great event, and there's a film that's produced that you'll also see information about. It's brand new, world premiere at the Moxie Cinema, and there is free movie popcorn. You can't beat it. So we're very glad to be putting this on. We're very anxious to have all of you as part of that, and most certainly anxious to have the district as one of our collaborative partners at the foundation. Thank you.
Any questions from any of the board members? Ms. Callan.
It's not a question, it's just a statement. I think for those of us who have had children in the public schools or still do, we just kind of take for granted what is available in terms of arts education. And my eyes were opened when my sister, who lives in the Bay Area, California, in what's considered a very good suburban school district, had her children going to an arts magnet school, and it was the parents who were teaching the arts classes because of lack of funding and support from the community. And so I think, again, when you don't have anything to compare to, it's kind of hard to not take what we have for granted. But I do appreciate the partnerships that we have in the community and the support that we have from our patrons to really realize that this is an important part of a comprehensive education for all children. And I know specifically as a mother of a child with a learning disability, her orchestra instruction and learning to play a musical instrument was key to really strengthening her ability to learn in the classroom. So I think sometimes we miss that connection as well.
I know that the Community Foundation has stressed collaboration, and this is probably one of the best examples of everyone working together in the same room. I'm just glad the district can be a part of it, and I think this is what you all are doing is impressive. It's taken a lot of work to get to this point. We're just glad to be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor and see it go forward. Mr. Lee.
And I guess one of the comments too would be, I think this may be a great model for a statewide type approach, because I don't believe that just looking at the way MSET 5 came out originally and all that, the emphasis on the well-rounded student with the arts and the culture it's not there. Some people just don't buy that, and particularly legislative people don't buy that. And so I really think that this is really an important, the collaborative effort to hopefully model, and I know that that's changed. The MSET 5 they listened, and because that was a risk of falling off the table. Kids weren't going to have the opportunity to take arts classes and be participating in arts because of the things and the restrictions that were there, and I think they listened, and I hope that this kind of collaboration can be looked at statewide, not just, I'm happy for Springfield, but I think it's so important that we need to be, this is a state issue from an education standpoint and not just what we do here locally. I hope that, we can take this kind of collaborative effort and take it to Jeff City and take it to DESE and take it to where it needs to go and say how important the arts is in the education of our kids.
Just have one question. Calvin, have you guys looked at other districts in the state to see how we compare with other districts? For instance, I know at Rockwood, they require I think it's all fourth graders to take strings. Do you know how we compare with?
We did not do that as a part of this particular initiative. However, we will be bringing the board some information through a program evaluation.
hold up on that.
Yes,
Hold up on that until we're done with the process.
exactly.
Okay.
Randy and Leah, thank you very much for being here and sharing that with us tonight. Kelvin, thanks for all you've done.
Leah, where'd you graduate from? Yes.
Go Chiefs.
All right.
We have one action item for vote tonight, 6.01, revision of board policy BBFA, board member conflict of interest and financial disclosure. This is the second reading, and we do need to vote on it tonight because it has to be turned into the state next week.
Right. Thank you. Can't say any more.
Any questions? I would listen for a motion. Mrs. Callan? By Mrs. Twitty, that the board approve BBFA, board member conflict of interest, and financial disclosure. And we can vote.
Who are you talking to?
You want to vote
Try
verbally,
again.
Denise?
I will vote. Let me vote.
Yeah.
Aye.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
It's your turn tonight.
The Gremlins. Action item for separate consideration is 7.01. This is second reading on the revision of board policy IGB, the independent education evaluation. We'll vote on it next time. Any questions for
Dr. Harrell.
Dr. Harrell? Thank you. Several routine action items that will be voted on next week are listed on your board docs. We have no other public comments. Board comments. Legislative update. I guess they're back in special session now.
Right, and I do think they're going to stay away from education issues. In light of the Kansas City discussion, I think that's kind of calmed down, and so I don't think we're going to have to be concerned about any issues around that. Am I right, Mr. Lee?
We're going to address Senate Bill 54.
Oh, yes.
Facebook
yes,
issue
yes.
that will be
I forgot about that.
talked
Sorry.
about. But that, other than that, unless somebody slips something in,
Yes.
I'm not aware of anything else coming up.
Is MSBA giving any feedback to them on that Senate bill? Yeah. Just let them.
They haven't. They understand the concern.
Yeah.
And the issue with that, definitely. But
Any future issues?
We have 4 presentations at MSBA, and each of you know who is going to be with which group, and so just remember that, and that's going to be, I think it's September 29th through the 1st.
Do we have that scheduled so we know when our presentations are? Have those been set up?
We've
We
been
don't-
trying to.
We don't have the time, okay.
We still haven't. I have
8
the
a.m.
list here.
Yeah, 8 a.m.
Yes. I think every board member knows who they're with,
Yeah,
right?
I've forgotten, so make sure we pass that around.
Let's see here. Mr. Renner's with the Read 180. Mr. Prater, or Dr. Prater is with the Human-Centered Design. And then Dr. Frederick is with using formative assessments. And then Chris Callan is with the Persistence to Graduation. Okay?
And when it comes out, you'll get us rooms and locations and times. Any other issues? Please feel free to do your plus deltas. We do need to have executive session.
One other issue.
Yes, sir.
I know we're in the.
Quick to get them in here.
Huh?
You have to be quick for
Well,
them.
we're supposed to be legislative, future, other. You just skipped completely the future issues, but.
No, he didn't.
Did he not? Okay, I'm sorry. I know we're looking to replace our energy manager, and prior to doing that, I wonder if it would be worthwhile for the board to have a conversation about what we would think. I know I've talked to the individual board members about where that position should be slotted, what the job description should be, who the person should report to, things of that nature. I think I've talked to you about that, Norm, as well. So I wonder if there can be a discussion at the board table prior to filling that position so that the board has a better idea of what that person's role would be and what we would expect in terms of what decisions they're in on, what meetings they're in on, things of that nature.
I think that's going to be all part of that process management discussion around the energy. I know I talked to Mr. Chodas about that. As far as we have the advertisement out, and there's been a job description.
There has been a job description,
yes.
But that's one of the topics that we've selected
for the process management. So, no, I would say that we're coming back to the board with that before we hire. Okay.
All right, executive session to discuss legal real estate and personnel matters as provided in section 610.021, 1, 2, 3, and 13 RSMO. And I vote on that. I would take a motion. Mrs. Twitty?
Second.
Mr. Lee?
Vote here.
Vote. Yes.
Did you get it again?
Did you get one?
Huh.
You can tell Mrs. Luden your vote.
Aye.
Get them on.
You feel bad?
Yeah. I always get the box. I didn't get it. Sorry.
Huh. Something going on
I
there.
went out
Okay.
too soon.
We'll adjourn.
Andy, did you switch computers
Yeah.
with me?
Yeah. All right.
Did I? It's got Andy Hosmer on it.
Thank you very much.
And
We'll
we had some
adjourn to
upgrades, by the way.
executive session.